Hi everyone, Dreki here, and today I'm reviewing the MJX Bugs 3 quadcopter. This is my second quadcopter review to date, which means I have a little bit better perspective in terms of how this thing performs. And let me just say, compared to the first quadcopter I reviewed, this thing is worlds better. It flies faster, it turns sharper, and it even has better battery life. So let's start off with the body of this quadcopter. The body is made entirely of plastic. There's a bright LED on the front which has saved me at least once from almost losing it in the sky. And there's a couple LEDs on the underside. There is a GoPro mount which is optional with removable legs if you're not using the GoPro mount. Without the legs it gets about 15 minutes of battery life, and with the legs and a camera it gets 8 to 10 minutes of battery life. The quadcopter is fully manual and there is no altitude hold, which means that you have to manually control it at all times. Looking at the controller, you can see that it has the triggers here, a couple buttons on the shoulders, and a couple trim adjustments, and that's about it. That makes this quadcopter very simple to fly, because it goes up or down, bank left, bank right, turns, and forward, backward. That's really about it. There's also the flip and roll, which is pretty cool. I'll show you that in a little bit. In terms of initial setup, the quadcopter came mostly assembled out of the box. All I had to do was screw on the blades and add on the extra legs so I could use my camera. Straightforward. All in all, the build quality of this thing is pretty good for its cost. The plastic feels solid yet lightweight, and the GoPro mount is fairly sturdy. The one thing that I wasn't happy about with the build quality of this quadcopter was the lack of a power button. So to turn on the power, all you do is plug this cord into the back here, like so. My concern is that plugging in and pulling out the cord repeatedly could cause it to wear down prematurely. As you can see, it's already missing a little bit of tape around one of the cords, and the more I pull on it, the more cord is exposed. Pairing the controller and the drone is simple. Make sure that the altitude adjustment is at its lowest point, turn on the drone, and then turn on the quadcopter. The controller and the quadcopter stay paired after the initial power cycle, so there's no need to reset or reconnect. One of the first things I noticed when I turned on this quadcopter is that it's pretty quiet. There's a little bit of engine whine, and of course there's the hiss of air, but the brushless motors seem to have less engine noise overall. As I mentioned earlier, this drone is significantly easier to handle compared to my first one, but I'm somewhat glad I learned how to fly on the other one because this is a lot faster. The handling is tight and turns are sharp. Flying this thing was the first time I actually felt fully in control of what I was doing with the quadcopter. I had the confidence to take it out in some fairly heavy wind to get a beautiful stormy sunset, and to take it out over water without worrying that it was going to fall out of the sky. When it gets near the edge of its range, the controller starts to beep. I never actually flew the quadcopter out of range or shut off the controller mid-flight as I didn't want to crash it. But I suspect that if it disconnects, the quadcopter might fall out of the sky, hopefully in a controlled way. Speaking of falling out of the sky, on the previous quadcopter I owned, when the battery was low it would just kinda lose altitude. In some cases it would land pretty hard. If you watched that review, you might remember I mentioned that I had no idea how to land the damn thing. Well, guess what? The instruction manual on the Bugs actually told me how to do it properly, and it's the same between both quadcopters. You know what the best part is, though? The Bugs quadcopter actually tells me when the battery is dying with a loud beep, which gives me a good minute to land it. This thing can also do flips and rolls, and they look pretty cool because of how big it is. It looks almost ridiculous, like it's going to fall out of the sky, but then it manages to right itself somehow. So there are a few small nitpicky points I noticed while flying. For example, the GoPro mount is pretty solid, but there is a little bit of side-to-side rocking. The camera's stabilization mostly corrects it, but if you look closely you'll see a little bit of shaking in the video. Also, another life pro tip, don't use your action cam Wi-Fi while this quadcopter is running, as they can interfere and that might cause it to crash. Look, I'm not an expert in quadcopter reviewing like I consider myself for cameras, but I know when I'm having fun, and this seems like an overall decent product if you're looking for a cheap quadcopter that carries a camera. It's got brushless motors which supposedly last longer than the other type, and the build quality seems to be reasonable, and the handling is very good. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, or share for more. I appreciate everything.